Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's Com Talk, Past the Pandemic, Launching Your Career in a New Environment. My name is Jen Underhill, and I'm a staff member here at the College of Communication. But more importantly, I'm a member of Com's class of 2021, as I, just like many of you, completed my master's degree in the midst of the pandemic. The pandemic challenged graduates as we navigated internships, job searches, and interviews, and started our careers unlike others, virtually. In today's Com Talk, you'll hear fellow alumni share their journeys and the secrets they've learned along the way. Remember, we hope for this to be a conversation. Our guests can also be mentors to you too as you begin your journey. And with that, allow me to introduce you to our esteemed panelists. First, let us welcome Lauren Gruber. Lauren is a 2020 graduate of the College of Communication. She started her career in Ketchum's Summer Fellows program and soon became an assistant account executive on the firm's Issues and Crisis team in New York. Today, Lauren is an account executive at BCW on its Public Affairs and Crisis team. At BU, in addition to her active participation in Jewish life on campus, Lauren was a member of the varsity cross country and track and field teams, a photographer for club sports teams, and a teaching assistant for BU's media relations course. When Lauren's not working, she loves a good coffee shop and exploring New York City's hidden gems. Next, let's welcome Arielle Warren. Arielle studied public relations, also graduated from Com in 2021. She works at Deloitte Consulting as a strategy analyst in the firm's customer and marketing business unit. During her days on ComAv, she was a captain of BU's national championship figure skating team and was an agency director with PRSSA. She also served on the executive board for Com's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Today, Arielle looks forward to sharing her perspectives on entering the working world and finding success in your career. Next, I'd like to welcome Emmanuel Reid. Emmanuel is an assistant account executive at Ogilvy, supporting consumer brands such as LG, Jordan Brand, and IHG hotels and resorts. He started working remotely at Ogilvy during the pandemic in 2020, where he has continued to support client teams with planning, coordination, execution, media monitoring and trafficking, and influencer and media relations. Prior to Ogilvy, Emmanuel served as an apprentice with ProSig Partners in Boston. To feed his CSR appetite, he also worked for the award-winning Purpose Brand PR agency. After work, the proud native of Chicago's South Side explores his passions in music, sports, and Marvel movies. Now, allow me to introduce you to our moderator for this afternoon's Com Talk, Heather Fink. Heather is the director of Com's Career Services, where she has worked with us for the past 4 years. Her career spans 10 years working with students, alumni, and employers at several prestigious universities, including, of course, Boston University, the Fletcher School at Tufts University, Wellesley College, Brandeis University, Northeastern, and Bingham University. And now I'll hand it over to Heather.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to work past the pandemic. And I'm going to start out with a question that anyone can answer. And I'll start with this. So if you're starting a new job, many of us, many of these employers have been hybrid. So what are some questions that you felt were useful to ask to be successful in your job search?
I'll kick it off. In starting your job search, you want to see, one, if they are going into the office at all. I personally am a huge, I'm in the office right now. I'm a huge fan of going into the office. I feel like there's nothing better than having those connections with your coworkers, being able to pop over to their desk, ask them a question and not, stress about it on Teams. When I first started, the amount of stress that I had asking questions, which is for some reason astronomical. You don't know them. You had never met these people before. And so being able to have that in-person connection, I would absolutely ask if the team's going into the office. I would also ask, if you're looking to work at an agency, what kind of clients do you work on? What is my day-to-day going to look like? Do we sit on a bunch of calls? Am I going to be media monitoring? Am I going to be taking first stabs at different drafts and stuff like that? I would absolutely get to know what your day-to-day is going to be like, because that'll give you some real insight into what your job is going to be,
Anyone else want to add? Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Lauren about asking, what is the hybrid environment look like for your company? I would say that my company is pretty much very virtual, but you have the option of going in person. For instance, yesterday I got to meet with my senior consultants on my team and organize a lunch for them. So seeing if there's opportunities to go in person if you want that for your company. So asking, what is the percentage, or is there the opportunity if I start to create those? And I would also say asking about what times people work best. So I know that some people block on their calendar. They may not be available, but it may seem like they're busy. So seeing what times your team is expecting you to respond to emails and be quick about it. I know my team is 9 to 5. You need to be able to respond to emails as soon as possible. But if you get an email at 7 a.m. in the morning, you can take a little bit of time and wait till it's on the clock. So just knowing the cadence of when your team expects you to be ready.
Great point. Emmanuel, do you have anything to add?
Yes, definitely. Again, thank you for the kind introductions and the invitation to speak today. Hope some of my words can help somebody in the crowd some way, somehow. Definitely echo the other panelists in their point. So I guess the only thing that I would add is in the remote work, in the hybrid work setting, context is lost on the larger scale, right? It's very easy for you to be in your particular location, especially if you're not in the office. Like Lauren said, you're not hearing those everyday conversations. You're not maybe as in tune or as included besides email, besides phone calls, making that extra effort. So I think in the search and when you get in the door, it's important to have conversations on how does your work fit into the larger team and how can you best contribute? Because if you know how the work is fits into the larger structure, yes, sometimes on a more maybe junior level, for example, you might not be able to see the perspective. But if you're able to take a step back with senior leadership and say, okay, you contribute this way, but your work is important. We need this because X, Y, and Z. This is the larger mosaic. That's going to help the team work more effectively, and arguably you might enjoy the work sooner when you first get onboarded. So definitely ask those questions for sure.
Really great points. Does anyone else want to add before I go to the next question? Okay. So the next question I have is, what ways have the workforce been different than what you expected, especially given that we're sort of coming out of a pandemic?
I'll kick it off. I don't even know what I expected coming into the workforce. Like, first of all, you get kicked off campus in March. I graduated in 2020. So you get kicked off campus. You're like, okay, my last 2 months of school are gone. Any preparation that I was planning to do in those last 2 months, any, last connections I was hoping to make with professors is sort of gone. And so I really had no expectation. I had no idea what I was getting into. There were many moments where I was like, am I even going to be employed this year? Am I going to have a job? But so that was sort of graduating into the pandemic. But in terms of going into the actual workforce, I just felt like I knew nothing about it. I'd always heard from, people who BU would bring in, and they were always later on in their career. And I was like, well, this is going to be my first job. What am I going to be doing? Because I'm not going to be the one leading strategy for this multi-million-dollar client. So a lot of the expectations, I didn't know. What it ended up being was really just supporting your team in any way possible. It is taking the initiative. It is raising your hand to do anything that you think that you could take a first stab at, write the first draft, say, hey, listen, I've never done this before, but I'm really interested in it. I want to give it my best shot. And 9 out of 10 times, somebody will say yes. Somebody will be like, yeah, go right ahead. Thank you so much for taking that initiative. So my biggest takeaway from my first year or two is always raise your hand, always take the initiative, always put yourself out there. 9 out of 10 times, people will say, yes, thank you so much. You've been a huge help. So again, didn't know what I would expect, but biggest takeaway, definitely take that initiative.
Excellent. Again, Lauren, I agree. The inculcation that I got from BU, BU inculcated a culture of learning and curiosity for me. And for that, I am very grateful, because the individual who's able to come in at the base level, raise their hand, right, show initiative, but also demonstrate an aura of curiosity, right? And show that you're somebody who's able to talk about a multitude of issues, show an interest in a multitude of topics and therefore potential client concerns and issues and demands. That's one thing that was a little bit, I wasn't expecting it as much, in part because that it was something that, I definitely heard in my classes at BU and especially income, but it wasn't until I was really on the ground floor where I was in client meetings and, you go from topic to topic, especially at some of these larger, maybe corporate accounts, where like LG, for example, there are, there's home appliances, but there's also home electronics. There's their solar division. Their recently closed mobile. So being able to go from topic to topic and then understand the issues that are in those particular units, for example, just required me to flex that muscle I got at BU of going from topic to topic, being curious, what are you reading related to coursework and also outside of coursework. So knowing what's going on in the industry and really consuming as much as possible to continue to be that curious, that was something that was really interesting to me. And then the second thing I'd say is the review process and the steadiness of reviewing is something that you should just be prepared to get comfortable with, especially at this level. Again, you're not, going to be submitting client work probably as soon as you get there, unless you're a standout, which I'm sure there are many standouts in the audience. I'm not saying any of you aren't ready, but it's especially when you're on board, especially in a hybrid setting where it's not as easy to get that on the in-person training. Again, people just want to get an idea. So getting comfortable with the review process, I would say, is really important. Understanding how to write for particular reviewers. Not everybody's going to review the same way. So the quicker you can get that under your belt, the quicker that you'll be able to move on to the client ready level.
Fantastic.
And I think to close it out, I'm going to go very tactical. So I think two things that I didn't expect when going from school to the working world were the amount of emails you're going to have to write. So whether you're writing emails for yourself or writing ghost emails for your senior people on your team, getting really good at creating different voices, and then also being able to really proofread your work, because it's not coming from me, it's coming from my senior manager going directly to the client. So making sure that you really think about, one of the things that comm has taught me the most was how to be a good writer. And I didn't realize that how I was going to be implementing that is fully through emails at this point. So just something that I never thought I would be writing, and writing so many ghost emails was something that was so new to me. And then the second thing is receiving constant feedback. So you receive a lot of feedback on everything you're doing in a way that is so different from school. So in school, you may receive feedback at the end of, a project or a paper, but you're receiving constant iterations throughout the process. So just being okay and knowing that it's not against you, there's nothing personal. They just want to get it to the best place it can be. And knowing that you're going to try to collaborate and incorporate as much as you can. So pro tip for that, I would say, is if you have another analyst or someone at your level on your team that you can tap and be like, hey, this is really important. Can you just reread it? Or can you go over it? Just want to make sure my ideas make sense, so that you're not bringing up ideas and getting so much feedback that you're slammed, but getting some really helpful, productive feedback to move your deliverable forward.
That's a great point. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think as an adult, most of what we do is write emails. We're not in meetings. So the next question that I have actually touches upon something Lauren was saying about her last month in college and how it was a little different than she expected. But if any of you could go back to your last month at college, what would you change other than a global pandemic?
So I can't say being on campus. I would really say, and I wish I had done this more throughout my college career in general, but making those relationships with your professors, and whether it's just staying 5 to 10 minutes after class. There were some professors who I've really connected with throughout school that to this day, I will still email, get on the phone with, catch up with, and not even about, it's about career and maybe career moves and, how is stuff going, because they've been in the industry before, but also just asking them how their lives are. Your professors are real people. They've been there, done that, and they've done it very successfully. And so using them as resources and really learning from them, getting those insights from them, because yes, they're your professors, but they've also been there and they've done it very successfully. And so I wish I had those last 2-3 months, whatever it was, to, really solidify even more connections with my professors, because to this day, I'm almost 2 years out. Shout out to that professor. Grasso, Krishna, Professor Sender. Like I could really go on. The professors at BU, I like adore. I think that they were some of the most influential people in my life. Professor Grasso is the reason I got into crisis PR. But to have those last few months, and I wish I'd started earlier. You know, I tell my brothers, who one's a freshman and one's a senior in college, and I tell them, like, make those relationships with your professors. Like, I cannot emphasize enough what resources these people are. So again, last few months, but also just over the span of your college career, really make sure that you are, you know, talking to your professors about your coursework and also about career goals, about whatever you want to chat about, if they're open to it.
Absolutely. That's why we have professors of practice. It's a very lucky thing to be part of BU. Emmanuel or Arielle, do you want to share?
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off that, but if you can, add your professors on LinkedIn. So a lot of them post so much and have great resources. And I would say, like, obviously start with that genuine connection that Lauren was speaking about, but then make it into the tangible. Literally preparing for this panel, I emailed Mr. Quigley. He knows all about my life. So just like keeping in touch with them and being like as up to date as possible. I would also say just like closing loose strings. So like you still have your email, but just like anyone you want to reach out to, any contacts you need, write them down somewhere, because the people that you work with are still people I'm in touch with. The people that maybe are in your class, you don't have a contact or something, get those, you know, like be like, I want to actually connect with you or like be friends with you outside of the classroom. And I know at least for me, it was still virtual or like part in person. So just really cementing those friendships, connections, relationships.
Arielle taught me that trick. We were hanging out one time and we were like exchanging career advice, whatever, you know, gals do on the weekend. And she was telling me like what a good idea it is. And to this day, like I still follow her advice of, you know, making sure that you hold on to those connections, because even working at BCW, there are 2 other girls in the office who went to BU, and I saw them when we all came into the office and I was like, oh my goodness, it is so great to see you. And it was because, you know, we were friends on LinkedIn and I had known that they were going to be here. And just, again, having those connections, solidifying them, even if it's virtual through LinkedIn, is so huge.
Yeah. LinkedIn, I'm a big proponent. I have the app on my phone, probably most used.
Awesome. I'm also going to add in the chat our Career Services website, which has access to guides on how to network and how to use LinkedIn. Emmanuel, did you want to say something?
Yes, I'll say the 2 things that stick out to me most prominently. One, taking advantage of the moment and getting familiar with industry trades and software. So the first one being the moment. There were many times after graduating where I could have looked back and said, man, I mean, you put things off. You always assume that tomorrow's going to be there. And as I'm sure everybody on this phone call has been inundated with pandemic related language, it really is true that you really cannot put off to tomorrow what you can do today. So that goes from, again, like Lauren and Arielle are saying, the social component of school, but also the personal development too. What skills have you really been looking at in yourself? What attributes are you working on? How are you becoming a better person, a better employee? Whatever adjective you want to place there, or noun, sorry, you want to place there. How are you working on that? And what are you tracking against? Obviously, nobody can track against an unforeseen pandemic, but if you're tracking against a goal of a concrete timeline you can look at now, how do you approach the question? Like, what if I need to push this up? Just as the industry happens all the time, what if we have to push up this announcement 2 weeks, 3 weeks, tomorrow? What happens if the news breaks and we have to, you know, correspond with media, like being adjustable? Essentially, how are you flexing that skill that you're adaptable, right? And that's one of, I think, the biggest thing that the pandemic has taught. But certainly I go back to time. I mean, you know, you could go from spending more time or spending less time in the dorm and exploring Boston to going into the second point, preparing for the particular industry you're entering. So there are a number of software and applications that I use in my day-to-day already to really be the best, you know, PR personnel that I can be but it's not that there was this exclusive wall. And that's one thing, I guess, going back to the earlier question, there's this false sense of exclusivity, I think, that some college students believe in terms of, oh, I'm just going to get access, or I'm going to worry about that once I start working. No, why not take the opportunity to really get as much as you can in, of course, your classwork, but also really try to hone in on those skills and on those practical, tactical skills that you can not just talk about in an interview, but really be confident in using, because that's one thing that I really wish that I did more. Not even just in the last month, but really just in the last year. And, overall in college, people switch around. So, after a certain point, once you're pretty solid, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm heading, really look into what do the successful people in that particular industry use. Everything from a LinkedIn to a Meltwater, a Muckrack, Cision, whatever it may be. How can you get access to that and figure out who has access and who can help you get better at that? So by the time that you get to this side, before anybody even has to ask or to train you, you're already set, you're ready to go, you're ready to be primed for success, and you've taken the initiative to just usher yourself into that role. So getting familiar with the software and taking advantage of the time that you have it, exploring Boston, or even more professionally focused would definitely be me.
I also want to add, so Manny just mentioned a bunch of softwares. Before I had started at any agency, I had no clue what Muckrack was, Cision, Talkwalker, you name it, no idea. I think the key to learning what softwares companies use is having informational interviews. And that's another thing that I wanted to add on is have so many of them. There was one job that I was so interested in. I think I spoke with maybe 10 people in that firm of just trying to get a grasp on the different work streams that they had going on different projects that they were working on, how I could fit in, and asking them again what their day-to-day looks like, of like what softwares do you use, like where do you get all of your information from, where do you do research, is it just on Google, do you use a platform like Muckrack? And so my answer here, or my point here, is twofold. It's like having those informational interviews to learn the softwares that they're using, and also the informational interviews to figure out what you want to do. I in college had no idea. I was like, I'm going to major in PR because I don't know what else to do. I ended up loving it. I ended up falling in love with crisis PR. And that was really something that I discovered, but only through, again, speaking with professors, speaking with people in the industry, and going through multiple interviews did I find out that that's what I really loved. So I encourage everybody on this call, everybody who's listening, reach out to people on LinkedIn. And what Manny put in the chat could not be more true. Authentic connections versus I'm here for a job connections are absolutely noticed. I've had people reach out to me and say, how do I get a job? And I'm like, first of all, I don't know. I'm kidding. I've given more support than that, but it's definitely noticed when somebody's like, Lauren, why do you enjoy working in crisis PR? Versus, hey, Lauren, could you send my resume over? I'm more likely to help somebody that's like, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. And I'm more likely to then pass them on to somebody else in the agency and say, I really think that you would be interested in this as well. Versus if somebody just comes to you and is like, can you send my resume along? So would highly encourage those as well.
Yeah, and I think Lauren has a really good point. This isn't an official question, but I think spending some time to talk about networking, what networking is, and the impact it's had on your career would be really helpful. Lauren shared a little bit. Arielle or Emmanuel, would you like to chime in with some?
Yeah, I love networking, so I love people. And so I really just view it as an opportunity to connect and to ask some questions. So for me, when I was looking at potential jobs, potential careers, I started with the people close to me. So professors, people in your BU community, but then I started expanding out to people on LinkedIn, random BU connections, really utilizing the network that BU does have because it's huge. And there's probably people doing something similar or close to what you want to be doing. And just pinging that, well, not pinging, I'm in my work mindset. You're gonna go on LinkedIn, message them, and they're probably gonna respond. I had like a 90% hit rate of people responding to me. So BU alums are out there, they wanna be helpful, and they really want to, impart some wisdom. I would say also, like, in that same vein, start early. So don't be like, I'm applying tomorrow and have an interview tomorrow and they're gonna respond, because they're not. Sometimes it takes weeks. People are really busy. People don't check all the time. So just like reaching out, like another pro tip, but when I started my senior year, I kind of had a list of companies that I wanted to work for and looked into what alums I could either reach out to or had a connection with that I could pay, like LinkedIn message. And then I started in September. And then by the time I got to like application season or the end of the year, I already had these kind of relationships, even if it was 1 or 2 times. And also don't view your relationship as a one way. So they're not just doing something for you. You never know what you can do for them. So actually a BU alum who worked at Spotify, she actually started a website and it was catered to college seniors. And she was like, can you get 15 people to test out my website? And I said, I'm in college. I'm sure I can find 15 people to utilize this website. So think about that. Think about how you can be helpful, whether it's even sharing an article that you read that pertains to their industry. Just thinking about those ways that you can make the relationship more two-way, even though you're in college at the moment and may not have something super tangible to offer.
Yeah, great point. I just added something in the chat for the job search guide. Emmanuel, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you want to also, sometimes as a career counselor, I often get asked what really informational interview means. Once you're in the workforce, it's really something that's obvious to us, but for people that are just not really sure what these sessions are like, do you want to also add that to your answer?
Sure. I actually vividly remember the informational sessions at Bay State with the Career Services Center. And it was actually through that center, and the great people there, very friendly, also other students, and of course, full-time faculty, but just the amazing people over there helped me to get an interview and internship my junior summer. So very helpful. But overall, I mean, if you're concerned or interested about understanding more of what an actual informational interview is, the best way I could say is the best metaphor that comes to mind is if you're on a college trip and you take a tour of the school, the sit down moment that you have before, where somebody is essentially giving you the master reel of the company. That's what it is to me. So essentially it's personnel from the particular firm really showcasing what it's like to be at that company. What are their key stats? They're going to go over, honestly, the same thing that a college might do, right? Somebody is not just presenting to you the information there, but I think overall they're showcasing the beauty, right? So everybody's, the big thing though, I've seen in informational interviews is come, as we've discussed, come with your own questions, your own perspectives, your own idea, and it very much helps to do your research and have an idea of what you're doing to help maybe take the quantity down. So you're really focusing on the quality for you at a particular point. But know that every college, just like every college wasn't right for you and you might have had an informational interview, similarly, every firm isn't the best place for you. And the more frank you are with yourself, the better chances you are of getting into a position that you're really going to enjoy. That doesn't mean that you go into these and either you try to be a know-it-all and try to show that you know more than the person actually taking time to speak with you, or conversely, you're not going to come in here and you don't be disrespectful or super lackadaisical. But I mean, it's important to know how you can fit into a particular firm or agency. And the interview is the informational interview, keyword informational, and not like an actual interview for a particular spot, is really supposed to help guide you to see if you could see yourself at that particular firm doing that work and engaging there. So it helps, like Lauren was saying, it's a very symmetrical road, right? It's not just you're giving everything or they're giving everything to you. It really is a give and play. And the last thing I'll say to that too is some really helpful advice I got is you need to start looking at your connections in terms of networking, looking at your connections as on a more structured basis. So instead of just sending random emails to everybody that that you've ever met in school, very exhausting. Nobody would want to do that, I'd imagine. Look at the top people in your village and see who you need to reach out on a yearly basis, on a quarterly basis, a semi-annual. That way you can consistently maintain contact with the individuals that you're really trying to learn and grow with. As again, it's not just going to be they're going to help me, but how can this be a symmetrical versus asymmetrical relationship? But really, that has helped me tremendously over the past 2 years. Who do I reach out on a quarterly basis? It's almost like if you're getting a letter of recommendation, right? You want to have contact with somebody who can, know something about you. So breaking down my connections into a quarterly basis, a semi, yearly, et cetera, or whatever time span you want to do. Maybe it's, every 3 weeks or something like that. But whatever time span works the best for you, get that structure in now while you're in school. So as you grow your connection list overall, you can be more structured and intentional about reaching out to people who can help you, but also who you can end up growing with overall.
Heather, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Who has that on their pandemic bingo sheet? You're on mute. It was very well said, Emmanuel. Thank you so much. And I was just thinking that's so insightful to talk about like who matters most and how often to contact them. There's actually in our informational interview guide a chart. You can have whatever chart you want, but it's one way of keeping your contacts organized and when you last touch base with them. So switching gears a little bit away from informational interviews, we have some people in comm that go into some non-traditional career paths. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how your degree has been marketable or applicable to industries outside of comm, and specifically to start this off with Arielle, who's at Deloitte. What made you decide to apply for a non-traditional career outside of comm?
So I think that this is like, I get this question all the time actually from comm students looking at my resume, my LinkedIn. I'm sure they find me somehow. But I think that for me, it was really synthesizing and honing in on what skills energize me at work. So I did 3 internships before I decided to apply to Deloitte for my full-time role. So I was thinking about what tangibly during those internships I really enjoyed. So what energizes me, I really like seeing a campaign from start to finish. I really like thinking strategically and thinking about how things work and what processes are needed to get the client from point A to point B. I also really like tech. So that was something I threw in there. Writing all the pieces of like what made Arielle and what energized me in a work setting really helped me look outside of comm into other possible career options. And I always say your degree is just your jumping off point. So thinking about how I could apply those and really tell a story, which is Comm 101, about how you're going to be useful in a totally different role. So I talked about the strategic thinking. I talked about how I worked on a lot of different PR campaigns and how I used my marketed different things in different ways. I really thought about who I was at the core and was able to tell that story to another job and industry and apply it that way. I think that getting really tangible, it was reaching out to those BU alums and being like, this is my interest. Can you recommend me? We just talked about don't do that, but seeing how to get someone getting in, talking to people, showing that I could apply, and then plug, I know this is a comm talk, but for all of BU is reaching out to professors across the board. So I had some really helpful Questrom professors who helped me learn about the consulting industry. I think through Handshake, because that was at my time, you have access to different events across the boards, or clubs have different activities. So the consulting club for me, I went to and asked questions of the students, my peers. So the one thing that is super amazing about how big BU is that there's probably a club or someone or something that knows about it. So I wasn't starting from scratch. I just was finding some different people on campus.
Thank you so much.
Arielle, first of all, Arielle is one of the most impressive people I know. She's so humble and so impressive, and I just biggest fan. But going off of what you just said about reaching out to different parts of BU, I can't tell all of you how many times in interviews people would look at my resume and I had different internships or different things that I was part of at BU solely because I genuinely love them. Photography, I absolutely love photography. I, love Jewish life. Jewish life was a big part of my life on campus. And so I had internships and I had done community service trips. And so being able to speak to those genuine loves and interests and seeing, okay, what did I really enjoy about this internship? What didn't I enjoy about it? And being able to speak to those points in interviews and highlight different things that you did. I get asked about PR Lab all the time, to the point that interviewers were like, what agency was this? Like, where was this? And I was like, it's our student run agency. And I, took them through it and they were like, oh, that's incredible. So being able to be part of things like that on campus, things that you enjoy for yourself, they're not because it's a required class or required course, it's because you love them, and you'll be able to tell that story so beautifully in interviews because it's so natural and it's something that you genuinely love doing, and you learn a lot about yourself through those different things.
Emmanuel, anything you want to add?
I think I got to start going first now. These two amazing panelists has taken all the points. No, I'm totally fine. The one thing I'll add to that would be very thankful for my PR degree, because at the fundamental level, it is revolved around problem solving. And so in every interview that I had, in every, even in all of my working environments in the client services business, when you're in public relations, no matter if it's financial, consumer, whatever sector, the crux of it is you're helping somebody solve a problem. And again, I was also a part of PR Lab, and a very transformational conversation I had with the professor was right before the final presentation, going in for advice. And Professor Joseph laid out very, very openly, how are you communicating to not just the people in the room, but the hypothetical clients, that what you're saying will help solve a fundamental problem. So I think that's the most open and upfront way that I've been able to market my degree and my time at BU. Is everything is from the classroom, and even again socially too. It was all revolved around understanding how to look for a particular problem, understanding it, and then solving it, right? Abraham Lincoln has that quote, like, if you gave me 7 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 6 sharpening my axe. Figure out, it's not just getting to the solution, understand what is the problem itself, right? And then don't just say, okay, this is how you solve it. No, sit down with the problem, analyze, like Arielle was saying, think about the larger contextual picture, going back to my initial point. Think about the larger context. What pieces need to line up where? What are the different avenues that we can get to a potential solution? I'm sure everybody's heard of a SWOT analysis. Like, really break down what needs to be done, because a lot of what you're doing at the junior level is you're being the arms and legs that actually execute on the problem solving that might be communicated or deliberated on a more senior level. So that's what I've been most attuned for and most thankful for BU for doing, really, from PR Lab to media relations, any comm class, really, right? Any other comm major, and arguably any major at BU. It's all about, how do we understand the world's problems, but most importantly, how do we work together to be able to fix them?
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that I just actually wrote that down, that the 7 hours to cut a tree, 6 hours to sharpen the axe. It's a really good analogy. And speaking of which, you have been speaking last. Let's have you answer this question first.
Amazing.
So that no one's going to steal your thoughts telepathically. So something we spoke about is, taking initiative. You spoke a little bit of, everyone spoke a little bit about informational interviews, but what do you wish that either someone told you, or did you take initiative to find out on your own?
Certainly can say, even to that point, closed mouths don't get fed. So if you're going to come in here, and especially in a remote setting, right, where it's already pretty difficult to show all the amazing personalities that are on this phone call right now, people will, I won't say pass over opportunities, but it will be more difficult to live into the pathway to promotion wherever you end up landing at in a communications role or elsewhere. You really do need to get comfortable speaking up, being a soldier and an advocate for yourself, and as Lauren mentioned earlier too, being around to really show that you're excited. So something that I had to take initiative on was, let me see. There was a campaign actually for LG, where we were showcasing one of our new washing machine units, for example, and it was a corporate. There was a social component attached because we wanted to showcase or help people make more clothing donations, as that was one area that had been largely impacted by the pandemic. It was upon me to figure out the beneficiaries to get the clothing, the donated clothes. But I took it upon myself to not just rest on what beneficiaries are in a particular area, but really expand the reach. So I ended up not just, before anybody had really asked, I'd identified agencies that were, I thought, good options to receive the donated clothes. And I presented also further findings with my research, like why and where they were, all the details, so that when that was presented, it was as easy for the client to make a decision and get things over. So that was something that I was pretty happy about, I would say, because it was a pretty, big part of the project, and I kind of just thought ahead. That was a big thing that I would push to. I thought ahead and just thought, how can I make somebody else's life a little bit easier? So yeah, just really taking initiative and being open to that feedback when you actually have feedback, when people actually give you feedback on something that you presented. You might think of it as your baby, but as long as you're you stay open-minded, but just figure out where you can insert yourself, that's definitely the most important. And I'm glad how the project ended up turning out overall.
Fantastic, thank you. Lauren or Arielle, did Emmanuel steal all of your thoughts this time?
Do you want to go, Lauren? Or I can.
I've been going first. You go.
Oh, okay. I can go. Okay. So I was going to go two ways with this because I feel like it kind of varies. And one is like advice no one ever tells you, but like I think it's good advice. And senior people will say it's bad advice, but I think it's good advice. So my advice is there are stupid questions. And I think that a way to take this is that first, before you ask someone senior on your team, check in with your peers, check in with Google because they may know, or check in with resources that your company provides. So making sure that before you really elevate maybe a problem, risk, question up to a senior person, it's not easily solvable at like a lower level. And I think that it's not to say don't ask questions, ask all the questions in the world. That is so important. It's just to say, make sure you've done some due diligence before bringing it to the table. And then my other one was like, I feel like a lot of times, like I've been talking to a lot of my friends who've been working a lot of different careers. And I think when you have this preconceived notion, you're going to get your first job. It's going to be the best experience of your life. You're going to be changing the world. You're going to be saying, oh my God, like I am, on PR to like save the water in like every unit. And you're like, then I get there and I'm really doing emails or I'm really doing something else. And you're not really a part of that bigger conversation. And I think it's okay. And I think I want to remind everyone that, especially at BU, you probably have big dreams and big eyes and you want to take on the whole problem, but sometimes it is you're starting at the ground floor and you're building your way up. So not saying that it's gonna take some time sometimes, but you are contributing, you do have purpose, you're doing amazing, and like take it day by day. You may not quote unquote hate that job, or you may not like dislike that role. It just may be what it is as an analyst or an associate. That's a part of the role.
I loved that point, Arielle, about stupid questions. I think it's also just kind of going back to elaborate a little bit. I think it's not just the stupid question, but it's who you ask the question to, yeah. Right? Because it's not necessarily that the question's stupid, it's that asking the wrong people is not wise. So
yes.
Yeah. Just rephrasing back what I heard you say.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that 100%.
One of the biggest things when I first started working with somebody said to me, they were like, if you are going to raise a question or if you are going to raise a problem to somebody, come with your own solution. And whether that solution is wrong or right, it shows that you went through the thought process of, okay, I'm thinking about how to fix this. I still don't know, but if I were to fix it in my own way, this is what I would do. And 10 out of 10 times, somebody would rather hear that, tell you that your solution is wrong, and then they will tell you how to fix it. But they will appreciate that you took that first step to figure out what your problem is. So again, taking that initiative, asking the questions, asking the right people, the right questions, and just trying to have a solution. You know, comm really taught us to be problem solvers. And at the end of the day, you need to solve your clients' problems. You need to solve your own problems if you are running into them. And another thing that Arielle said is like, you know, the work that you're doing when you first enter, you may feel like it's not super exciting, or it's not what you came to an agency to do. But the work that you're doing, those monitoring reports, those drafting those emails, those ladder up into huge, huge things. I can't tell you how many times clients come back to our monitoring reports and they're asking questions and they're analyzing. My first week at Ketchum, they put me on a monitoring report, and the client every single morning read through that report, asked us questions, and wanted to know what was going on with their company. And so the value of the stuff that we do and write is immeasurable to the team, you know, and they appreciate it, and making their lives easier, as Manny said, is huge. That's all. That was all my thunder.
Oh, you're fine. Emmanuel, did you have a chance to? Okay.
Yeah, I covered it.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure everyone has their chance to talk. So we have about 10 minutes left. So far, there haven't been any questions, but I would like to just give a chance in case anyone is thinking and wants to throw in a question. Otherwise, I have one last question. Okay. I don't see anything that's come in. Why don't we use the last 10 minutes, if it's okay with you guys, to just anything that you were hoping to share today, or just something that you feel you haven't said but want to say to anyone that might be listening, that's currently a BU student. Emmanuel, do you want to start since you went last few times?
Sure. I'd say, you know, I want to sound cliche, but really do live in the moment. You don't get these years back. You don't get this time back. So treat every day really as the gift it is. You know, you're not going to graduate an expert in your field. That's a really helpful piece of advice I got from my brother. A lot of people finish their 4 years and they think they're supposed to be total experts. That's not the case. The point of college is to be that jumping off point. So, sorry.
Thanks, Alexa.
Apologies for that. She's always watching out, you know what I'm saying? But no, you're not going to graduate school as a total expert in your particular field. It's supposed to be a jumping off point. So really treat for any of the seniors who are edging into the period of graduation, you know, you got one foot out the door, really continue to see yourself as somebody who's willing to learn, right? Don't get too full of yourself, but of course be confident in your abilities. And for the rest of the students on the phone call who are coming behind, continue to look at yourself as somebody who is moldable, who is somebody who is capable of great success, and each of us are better than the worst thing we've ever done. So rooting for everybody on the phone call, and very proud of all that I continue to hear BU students are doing. And proud to be an alum or alumni or a member of the graduated class and community. I'll talk around it.
Arielle, you want to go next?
Sure. I was trying to think when Manny was speaking about what I would say. But I think that there's so many opportunities out in the world, and it's about being creative and thinking really hard about what you want to do with your time, your space, whether it's in your work or just a passion project, not on the side. I think like all of life is like equal, but I think that it's really important to start to do some self-reflection as you go into the next phase of your life, whether you're a senior or even if you're going into your next year of school. Like, what clubs do I want to join? What do I want to be a part of? Is there a professor that I really want to get to know this semester? So really thinking about who you want to be and how you want to show up for work, school, your life, I think is really important. And I think that like overall, my major takeaway is like, it's a career. It's going to be great. It's going to be exciting. But there's so many twists and turns and you never know where you can end up. I never thought that I would be learning Python and doing blockchain coming from a PR degree. So like I'm officially a woman in STEM, but I would say that like it's so exciting to me. And this is something that I just started reaching out to people and was able to get that experience through just networking. So you never know what skill you're going to learn next and where that could take you. And I think that that's what's super exciting. And like the unknown is amazing, especially when you're in a senior in college. Cause like, you're like, I don't know, there's so much. That's it for me.
Coloring is very hard. I think my biggest thing would be, well, two things. It's okay to not know, like I graduated college not knowing, like applying to so many different jobs, but again, having those interviews and learning, what do I like? What do I not like? Asking those genuine questions of like, what does your day-to-day look like? What's your favorite part about your job? What's your least favorite part about your job? What is your management style? How can I fit into that? Asking those questions to see how you would fit into a company. It's hard to know what you like. It's hard to know what you don't like. There are obviously opportunities in college, take advantage of them as much as you can, but there are some things that you don't get to experience in college. And so the only way that you'll know that is by speaking to people, reaching out on LinkedIn, making those different connections, and there's some type of announcement happening. And having those conversations, asking those genuine questions about stuff that you really do want to know about, not just like, so what is company culture, which is important. That's an important question, but make sure it's genuine. What are you going to get from the questions that you're asking? And so I encourage everybody to network, to go on LinkedIn, to think about what you like, what you don't like, and you'll figure it out. It'll be okay. I promise.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for spending some time to talk with the students today. And share some of your wisdom. It's really great to always see alums come back and want to give back to their time and their ideas back to the student body. So I think with that, I think we are gonna be ready to wrap up. I wasn't sure. Oh,
Yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
all
for
right.
having
Take
us.
care, everyone.
Add us on LinkedIn.
Yes, add us on
Oh.
LinkedIn. We'll put
LinkedIn.
our,
If anyone wants to put their email into the chat.
Oh yeah, feel free to do that before I shut down.
hold on. Now I got to go to my LinkedIn.
I was like,
I wasn't prepped with that.
Sorry.
My time.
Hold on, it's pulling up.
They
It's just Lauren Gruber.
can find you. They're smart BU kids.
yeah.
They are.
There we go.
I think
I
one
was like,
more
what's
thing.
mine? There we go.
But please add us on LinkedIn if there's anything that you had more questions about, that you just wanted to talk to us about. I'm going to speak for myself. I don't want to speak for them. But like, I am here to answer your questions. I went to so many people when I first, started my job search, of just asking questions, reaching out, sending those messages, and just doing it. Just, if somebody responds, they don't, they do, they don't, I sent that message, and the most 9 out of 10 times those questions and those conversations will be very, very, very helpful. So please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Go Terriers.